Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second day of BioMarine. Sorry, my slight French accent. So, welcome everybody, and happy Halloween. Today is Halloween, of course. And I'm glad to see, even though we had quite a bit of chlorella yesterday, none of us turned green for this morning. So that's very good. Okay. So today, in the first round table, we're going to talk about the nutraceutical market and functional foods, and how marine bioresources are a source of new innovation for this very important and growing and very large market of well-being around the world. Today, the roundtable is sponsored by the Scottish Economic Development Agency called Highland Islands Enterprises, which is today represented by Donald Fowler, who is in the audience today. Thank you, Donald, and thank you to Highland Island Enterprises. My name is Brian Monks, and I'll be the interviewer today. Today we have three distinguished guests from the industry, and I will pass over the microphone to each of them so they can give you a little bit introduction of who they work for, what their background is, and so on. Today from my far left we have Fabrice Boin from Evangenics. He will give a little bit more information about his company to you in a few minutes. Then we have Joanne Pitt, who is from the Scotland Association of Marine Science. And lastly, we have Charlie Bavington from the Scottish company Glycomar. So Joanne, will you please give us a little brief introduction of who you are and the association and the research institute you work for?
Hi, good morning everybody. First of all, thanks to Brian and to Hi and BioMarine for organising this panel session. It's an honour to be on the panel. I'm the Knowledge Exchange Manager at SAMS, which is the Scottish Association for Marine Science. So SAMS is an independent research organisation based on the west coast of Scotland. We have global marine science projects covering all aspects of the marine environment, from the deep sea to the coastal regions, from the Arctic to the Antarctic. Our Centre for Marine Biotechnology is focusing on how we could use marine resources to deliver new products and services and solutions for society. We specialise mainly in the upstream cultivation, growth, harvesting and characterisation of marine microorganisms, mainly focusing on algae, marine macroalgae and microalgae, as well as marine bacteria and fungi. So within that centre, I work with our scientists to take their research findings and their ideas to and develop them further to commercial application. And I also work with businesses to work collaboratively on their technical challenges to try and overcome them through collaboration.
Great, thank you. Obviously, you'll be a very important industrial partner, institutional partner for the corporations and the companies working on developing their innovative molecules from marine bioresources. Charlie.
Good morning, Brian. Good morning, everyone. My thanks also to Hi and to the organisers for inviting me and giving me this opportunity.
On your chin.
My name is Charlie Bavington from a company called Glycomar in Scotland, but Glycomar in other parts of the world. Glycomar means sweet sea, sugar from the sea. So we are a glycobiology company, which means we specialize in carbohydrate polysaccharide chemistry. And we are discovering and developing novel therapeutic molecules based on sugar chemistry, mostly coming from marine organisms. We take the discoveries through early stage development into a number of therapeutic areas. So we're looking for therapeutic value in inflammation, and we take these into pharmaceutical development, into cosmeceutical development, cosmetic ingredients, and also into nutraceutical development. So we have a platform technology which has been going now for nearly 10 years, and we are taking those into multiple markets based on a core chemistry and functional properties.
So you have R&D, you have discovery, and you also have distribution and marketing.
We have a semi-outsourced model, so we have the core intellectual property in the chemistry and the functional properties of the molecules, and we do the early stage discovery and development. And then to take them to market, we partner with either large companies through an out-licensing model or with smaller partner companies where we co-develop to get them to the market.
Okay, all right, thank you. Fabrice, good morning.
Good morning, good morning, everyone. So I'm Fabrice Boin. I'm the new CEO of a company called Aviagenics, which is a French company belonging to Free Private Equities. So, and it's a company that is developing some kind of compounds out of renewable raw materials through fermentations. Compounds that can be flavors, can be colorants, etc. And I'm actually interested by the macroalgae as a raw material. I have a pretty I have some experience in that because for 10 years I was in charge of the specialty hydrocolloid business for Cargill, so which is composed of seaweed extract, like alginate, carrageenan, fruit extract, plant extract, and also biogums. And prior to that, for another 10 years, I was in a company called Rodia Food, which is now part of DuPont, where also we were on biogums, some seaweed extract, plant extract, and also bacteria. So I know a bit the polysaccharide world out of seaweed or other things.
That's right. So you have a lot of experience in macroalgae and seaweed cultivation and valorization, if we can say that.
Yes.
And the sugars that come out of it, but not only the sugars, but other ingredients that come out of seaweeds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was mostly in charge of the business.
Yep.
So making sure that we were developing the business, the revenue out of the seaweed, so the extract and in the different applications that can be food, personal care, and all kind of things. So I'm here to share this experience. And
great. Well, we're going to have lots of good questions for you over the next hour. And my name is Brian Monks. I'm a consultant in innovation and international development, and I have a soft spot for companies working in the marine sector. So that's why I'm here today. And again, well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for all the people online. Good morning to those people who are looking at us from wherever part of the world. And happy Halloween one more time. Today we're going to talk about the nutraceutical market, and it's a very important market, I think, and you guys are all here today because a lot of you are working in discovery of these new ingredients that are going to respond to this enormous demand for this enormous demand for well-being. People are turning towards prevention and away from curative methods, and they want to eat better. And so we have giant companies like DuPont and BASF and DSM who are now marketing new innovations of natural food ingredients to help proposedly prevent cancer, help with your memory, help you lose weight, help with your gastric reflux, all sorts of things. And people at the end, the end user is just dying for these wellness ingredients. And so there's a multi-billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar business right now that is searching for new innovations. Now, a lot of these innovations are natural, but not a lot of them are from marine sources. I would say marine sources are just the tip of the iceberg. And so in the end, does the resource really matter to the end consumer? And we'll probably get to that as we continue our discussion this morning. The second thing that is important and that we'll talk a little bit about today is the marketing claims. And this is non-resource specific. Every ingredient has to, and every development of a new ingredient has to think about this. How are you going to position your ingredient? Are you going to invest a lot of money into the development of an ingredient that you know will cure cancer, but in order to prove that, it's going to cost you hundreds of millions of dollars. And in the end, the regulatory people might not accept it on the label of that juice box. So we talked about this yesterday in another session. You know, how do you position your molecule in a market that is really focused on wellness? So we're going to talk about hard claims and soft claims today because it's important. It's not resource dependent, but it's an important thing for everybody in the ingredients market to consider. Now, technically, there's a lot of technical issues, and I think that's where we will dig into some really important marine-specific issues here. Microalgae, we have issues with the water. Maybe there's too much water when you're trying to do photobioreactors or fermenters, and you have to remove all that water. It costs a lot. You have to build big ponds, or you have to build thermoreactors that are just, acres and acres long. Macroalgae, seaweed, it's all about cultivation. You need to find the space. fish byproducts. What are you going to do? Is it only omega-3s, or are there more things that can come out of fish byproducts? We're going to talk about that today. Cultivation is a really important thing. We're going to get down to cultivation. We're going to look at some of the joint ventures that have happened already between some of the two that are helping solve these technical issues. We have genetic companies like Synthetic Genomic Institute from the United States partnering with microalgae companies, because at least in this marine bioresource, the idea of GMOs is acceptable. It's not acceptable in others, but that's what we'll talk about a little bit later. So, without further ado, let's start asking some questions to our panelists and see what's going on here with the BioMarine resources in terms of nutraceutical and functional foods. Now, Charlie, I'm going to ask you the first question, because what we've seen over the last decade or so is that there's been a transformation of traditional bioresources of fish byproducts and macroalgae towards the next generation of marine bioresource, which is microalgae. And the question is, is there still innovation to be found in fish byproducts?
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, the answer is yeah. That's your short answer. There was a great panel discussion yesterday on the subject of fish byproducts, and I would include shellfish within that whole area. And the message that came out of that session is that utilization of fish byproducts is actually very high. In some geographies, you're nearing 100% utilization of fish byproducts. So this is quite a mature industry with some well-known products, omega-3, obviously, fish oils, and fish meal protein products. And so moving from that base, there still remains an opportunity for innovation. And there is, on the one hand, some new species which have not been exploited yet, where the byproduct is not the basis of a mature industry. And that's one area, and that's kind of geography specific. And I would include shellfish there. I think shellfish is lagging behind fish in utilization. So there's work to be done technically to develop products from shellfish, and there's an opportunity there to move beyond. Chitin is well known, but there are other opportunities in shellfish. And then I think for the more mature fish sector, I think we see products moving up market. So omega-3s being refined and going into higher value markets. So I see that as the primary area of innovation to move up value by refining, purifying, showing functional properties of your products. So omega-3 oils, for example, can have pharmaceutical applications. And BASF, for example, have invested and acquired companies in Scotland with expertise in that kind of refining.
That's right. We've seen actually there's a BASF bought a company in Norway right now, and so because they see the advantages of being close to a sector that is into fish byproduct catching, and they see that they can take advantage of all that ecosystem that is there to then dig further into these fish byproducts.
Exactly, and another area with fish, obviously, there's a big fish meal industry. But there's an opportunity to move fish meal on and go to hydrolyzed proteins and develop those as functional food ingredients. So we're moving from kind of animal feed to higher value markets. And then going back to shellfish, I talked about chitin, chitosan, which is a source of glucosamine. That's a big market, a very mature market, a commodity business. But that too can be moved up value. So chitin, chitosan have applications in wound dressings, medical devices, and advanced biomaterials. So, very high value markets where you're taking, moving from a commodity business to produce a high value product. And that's an exciting area of innovation. And of course, there is an opportunity to find new things, especially when you're working with species which are underexploited or unexploited.
Yeah, okay, so I see. So maybe early on, a decade or so ago, they were just extracting the sugars from the fish byproducts or the oils, and they were saying, look, this has a general beneficial effect, but now they're going to use enzymes and treat this and hydrolyze these basic raw materials that come from the fish and create new things that will fill this innovation gap.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that's a general trend to upvalue the byproduct.
Okay. Well, I think we can talk about this with seaweed, can't we, Fabrice? Because seaweed, again, is a traditional bioresource where they get ingredients from, whether it's just to be a part of your salad on your plate, or they're extracting things from it. So, like with the fish byproducts, is there more innovation coming out of macroalgae?
Yes, actually, microalgae, macroalgae, these are areas of a lot of innovations and a lot of movements today. So in macroalgae in particular, it's already a business which is just the extract of macroalgae is a market of over $1.3 billion today, with applications being mostly in food, some in pharmaceuticals, some in personal care, and some also in industrial applications, but food being the primary growth vehicle, where actually those products are used for, as we are talking about health, are used for fat replacement.
Yeah.
They can be used for heartburn disease. They can be used as a vegetable casein and all kind of things. But indeed, there are much more out of the seaweed that people are not necessarily looking at, I would say, in the byproducts of that extraction. And you have molecules that can be flavor, that can be antioxidant, that can be immunomodulatory effect, that can be anti-cholesterol, that can be anti-inflammatory. Some are known, and some are having some commercial application. I'm thinking, for example, of fucoidans, which is something which is extracted from brown algae, and where the market is mostly in Asia and growing in the US.
Fucoidans, for the people who don't know, what beneficial effects do these have?
The benefit, I mean, is about so you have different benefits: immune, gut health. You have anti-inflammatory. They are the primary health benefit that you can.
And this is a new innovation coming out.
No, it's not a new product. It's already existing, and actually a lot of things are discovered also from the Asian that they've been traditionally using and eating a lot of seaweed. And they when we are talking about $1 billion or over $1 billion of extract, you have also this kind of number and even more on the seaweed that are used every day, especially in Asia.
Right,
for
because
food.
it's a food, right, it's
and,
they're salad, they're vegetable.
And people over there know the benefit in health related to the seaweed.
So we can learn a lot from the Asians in terms of getting some of our nutrients from
Asian, Chinese, Japanese in particular.
From a sea vegetable.
Yeah.
So you see the future bright in terms of innovation coming out of macroalgae. You think?
Yes, but also not only that, it's also a natural resource that you can expand, and you can expand without any harm to the environment.
So it's sustainable. So that's a very important thing.
It's sustainable if you do that in a certain way.
Okay.
So you need to make it sustainable, but it can be sustainable, and it can be. It's very rare to find a raw material where you can expand the resource without any harm to the environment.
Right.
On the ground, it's much more.
Well, I think this is leading us to maybe another question about cultivation. Now, tell me, where in the world are the centers of cultivation? Who's making the most seaweed in the world today?
So in terms of seaweed cultivated for food, used directly for food, it would be Asia, definitely, because that's traditionally where. But they come to a point where they have so much demand that they need to import. Actually, now, if you go to China, you're going to see a lot of seaweed.
They need to import.
Yeah, they need to import seaweed from Chile.
Okay. So Chile is another huge producer.
And Chile is the other huge producer, and most probably one of the most strategic places for seaweed, because the coast is very long. There are a lot of biodiversity, a lot of seaweeds being there. Most of them are wild seaweed, but you start seeing some program and some companies being quite advanced in the cultivation of wild seaweed, and that's really where the future can be. And it's not obvious to cultivate wild seaweed. I mean, it sounds like you put that into the water and everything's fine. It's absolutely not the case, believe me, because you're going to get all kind of things you don't want.
Sure.
And,
but
so,
the technical expertise does not only reside in Chile or in Asia. The technical expertise, I think we know, also resides, is global. We have experts in seaweed in Europe and in the United States. And here we are in Portugal, and there are seaweed fields here, there are seaweed fields in France, not far, there are some in Scotland. But why are the Europeans so far behind in cultivating the seaweed and responding to this demand?
Yeah, then I think you need to ask the government, and because I mean I don't have a good answer to that question. I've been asking myself also that many years. I think from what I've seen over the last 2 days, Portugal seems to be quite. I'm quite amazed by the government in Portugal promoting and pushing that marine resource. And it's fair to say that I've seen in other countries, not all, but don't want to give specific names, but sometimes it's you have more barrier.
What about in France? You're from France. What?
I don't want to talk about this one. No, but I mean seriously, there are some countries that understand the marine importance and the potential better than others, and that are going to be helping the companies in that field more than others. So I don't want to make any statement on any of those.
I think it's okay to be provocative today. In France, I know in Western France, there is a tradition of seaweed harvest, but not cultivation. And so they try to organize this at a regional level, and they try to get the government behind it. But then there are the already in place regulations around the coast that sort of break this development from happening. Right?
Right. Yes. But harvest is, I mean, if you just do harvest of wild raw material, and there, most of the countries are having the same situation. They take care of the quotas, and they take care of the the fact that it can be sustainable. So harvest is not cannot be the only solution. So you need to go beyond just harvesting wild raw material into cultivation, etc. So again. You asked me the question, what are the biggest countries? I said Asia, Chile, definitely, and probably one of the most strategic, and then hopefully Europe, some countries in Europe will...
Hopefully, that's right. If there's anybody from Scotland here, maybe that somebody can add some... Donald, do you have anything to say about seaweed cultivation in Scotland? Come here. No, come here, you have to come up. So this is Donald Fowler, our sponsor of today's session.
Yeah, seaweed cultivation at the moment in Scotland's embryonic. We have a number of companies cultivating seaweed to look and see what grows when they try and do it. SAMS, the Scottish Association of Marine Science, have a pilot seaweed farm in the Sound of Kerra on the west coast of Scotland. And they're quite well advanced in the science of growing seaweed. Maybe Joanne could say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, within Scotland, as Don says, I think the seaweed industry is quite embryonic, but we do have a long history of working with seaweed. So traditionally, seaweed was harvested as a foodstuff and for fertiliser all around the northwest coast of Scotland, but harvest kind of died off over the last kind of few centuries, and I think now there's a kind of revitalisation of the seaweed industry within Scotland, and whilst it's still supported mainly by harvest, there is a movement from the businesses towards cultivation, and certainly we're working with a number of food businesses who use seaweed as an ingredient, but what they're finding is wild harvest can't support the demand for their product, and so they're having to develop cultivation systems. And so at SAMS we've got a pilot scale seaweed farm, which is two 60-metre long lines and two 30-metre double lines off Kerra, and so it's quite a sizable farm, but we're also looking to scale up that farm over the next year. But we're also looking at land-based tank cultivation of seaweed, and the reason we're doing that is because within tank-based cultivation systems you have much more control over the product, and so we can develop the system to make sure the food companies that we are working with have not only a supply of their product long term, but also the quality of the product remains consistent, which is of course really important in this market.
Also, there's quite a lot of seaweed cultivation going on in conjunction with IMTA, with integrated multi-trophic aquaculture alongside salmon farming, so utilising the nutrients that are coming in the water column dissolved from the farms.
Sorry, just one last point.
Great, thank you.
Just to pick up Fabrice's point on the government, I think that one of the reasons Europe's perhaps further behind is because there's not been the support for seaweed cultivation. It might be a historic market issue, but within Scotland, I think it's definitely recognised that seaweed is a real opportunity to develop new businesses and growth, and the Scottish Government has recently closed its public consultation on seaweed cultivation, and so it's very much recognised within Scotland that this is an area that could provide growth.
Great.
And there's beginning
Great.
to be the support there.
Okay, great. So with this type of support, we may see increased cultivation. And I think what we didn't talk about is that different areas around the world have different purity of water issues. And so maybe Europe can focus on high quality because they can perhaps claim that their waters are purer than perhaps other geographical areas.
Certainly in Scotland, the food companies that we're working with, their main marketing is kind of based around the purity of the Scottish waters
exactly.
and the natural product that comes
Yeah,
from
we see
it.
that with the salmon. Just when you want to buy salmon, you think the fresh, clean waters off the coast of Scotland. So we've talked about two of the traditional resources, the macroalgae and the fish byproducts. But the next generation bioresource for nutraceuticals and for other things is microalgae or phytoplankton. Here we see vitamins and proteins and antioxidants coming out, but it's also an innovative source of biofuels. So this is a very powerful resource that is also sustainable and renewable. But we see perhaps some cost issues here. We see cost issues when you think of microalgae as a producer of biofuels. Now, I think we probably all see some cost issues when we talk about microalgae as a source of nutrition and functional foods. One of the things that what I've learned speaking to the panelists is that to solve some of these technical issues, the idea of genetically modified organisms is not accepted in certain biomarine resources like fish byproducts or macroalgae, but in microalgae perhaps it's a little more accepted to have a technical solution coming from a genetic modified organism. So what I'd like to know is from one of the experts on microalgae like Jean-Paul Caderet, who is sitting in the front row, what you think about GMOs as a solution to the technical issues to microalgae in their production of nutraceuticals and ingredients. Could you come up here, Jean-Paul? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brian. Good morning. Yes, we're. Well, I was leading an algae lab 15 years at Ifremer in France, and one of my team was a molecular biology team. And we created what I think is still the only company producing GMOs in algae for pharmaceuticals, called Algenics. Now there are key issues because my impression is we will be able to produce GMOs in algae for pharmaceuticals, and this is what we did. But I'm not sure that we will be able to put GMOs in the sea. For a lot of reasons, for personal reasons, for citizens' reasons, for political reasons. So who wants to try to, and I know it's done in Asia, for example, who wants to try to fight for that topics will go, I will not go. So yes, we can produce pharmaceuticals, high-value protein, complex proteins in algae like we do for probably 80% of the medication you're buying now. There are GMOs, and this is a big luck for us that there are GMOs. They are much more controlled. Yes, we can do that, but in my opinion, we will not go for food or feed or even any outdoor cultivation with the GMOs. Answer your question?
Right, but we see joint ventures with synthetic genomics and other microalgae producers like Pharmachem with their production of astaxanthin. Okay, so it looks like they're trying to develop a new strain that will produce much more of this, and obviously it's going to be in a container. It's going to be in a photobioreactor.
I will not only fight for what is also a kind of strategy from people. I will not go for outdoor cultivation of GMOs. Some say there is no hope for biofuels without GMO. I read that, but my opinion, and this is what strikes me, and yesterday I think we talked about. Why should we go for GMOs for the moment, as we are working with 10 to 20 strains out of 1 million? There is so much to do for the moment with the biodiversity, and we can surf on this biodiversity too. Not only the biodiversity, but once you get a new strain, a very original strain, you can even improve it. We have 10,000 years of agriculture that shows us how to do. So I'm not sure I would bother to go, I mean, it's personal. I'm not sure I would bother to go to GMOs for large quantities where you have so much to discover still, and once you have it, you can select them. We published, and we're not the only team, we published a paper that showed that we were able to select an algae to produce twice the amount of lipid, total lipid, in a natural way, unstable. And we can go to 3 times, I hope, and we can do with a lot of other strains.
So I think we should underline that. There is just still so much biodiversity out there that we should continue to search and look at other strains before we're worried about other solutions.
I want to echo what you're saying,
Jean-Paul,
because on macro algae, I think maybe there is a confusion between macro and micro algae.
Please, let's make underline that.
On macro algae, I don't think, I think it would be crazy.
Yeah, because they put it in the ocean.
To put GMO in the sea.
Right.
I mean, I don't see any European, Latin American country thinking even to do it.
I agree. I think companies would not want to.
And because then how do you control that? How are you going to be controlling the fact that it does not reproduce in the sea?
Well,
so I think
you can also change its sexual reproduction so that it doesn't reproduce.
Yeah. So whatever. I don't think it's ever gonna be.
I'm just provoking. That's all.
Yeah. So no way. I cannot imagine a company even promoting that idea. I think they would have a ton of people coming to them. So here it's for macroalgae, and in Asia I don't know. You know most probably better, but if they do that, then good luck. Because I mean, and already in Asia, I think you said that. The other thing that is very important on macroalgae is the purity of the water.
Yes.
And the purity of the water comes from the pollution. So the countries that are very careful about pollution, like in Europe, again, Chile is really a very good example of that. Then they have the guarantee of a seaweed being of high quality. I invite you to go to China and go by the shore, and then you get your own opinion. Because seaweed is going to basically concentrate.
Yes, all of the.
So not all, but it can concentrate.
It's a filter.
And then if you concentrate. If you take a raw material that has concentrated something and then you extract something out of that,
yes.
I mean, you don't need to be a big scientist to understand what kind of problem you're going to get.
That's a very good explanation. You wanted to say something, Charlie?
Sure. I really wanted to address your question about microalgae, and I think personally that genetic modification is going to be required, and people are already doing it. So Solazyme are a good example, a biofuel company. Their first product was a cosmeceutical, which they make from a genetically modified microalgae.
A cosmeceutical. So that is like a nutraceutical, but instead of making you more healthy, it makes you prettier.
Makes you look better.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So you still have
and we also have nutricosmetics, which are things that you eat that make you look better. So.
Okay.
But that is a good example, and they also had a deal with Roquette in nutrition. Again, based on GMO microalgae. So there are some geographies where it's not acceptable, but there is a problem with the fundamental productivity of microalgae, which may make commercialization unviable.
Yeah, because of the price at the end.
And that's why at the moment everybody is producing very high value products. It's the only thing that's viable.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and that we'll get to later, because when you produce a high value product, you're going to have a claim that backs it up, and that brings with it more risks, and we'll get to that later. But as a response to these technical issues, Joanne, you work for a technical core facility, or so to speak, and one of your roles is to accompany companies that have R&D issues, and you are there to sort of lend a hand with your technical expertise and help them get out of their technical blockage. Could you talk a little bit more about your experience helping companies promote and accelerate innovation with this unique private-public partnership?
Yeah, so SAMS, as an independent research organisation, interacts with businesses in a number of ways. So our Centre for Marine Biotechnology is underpinned by our in-house culture collection for algae and protozoa, which houses nearly 3,000 strains of microalgae, macroalgae, and protozoa from across the world. So in terms of just picking up your point on biodiversity and bioprospecting, even within our own in-house collection, there's a massive amount that can still be done.
Right, so discovery.
Yeah, loads more of discovery can be done within that. And so answering your question, interacting with businesses come to us on a number of different levels depending on what their requirements are. On a basic level, if they're looking for some bioprospecting, we can supply them with strains of different microalgae or different species that they're looking for. We can also host their patented strains. If they have patented strains, we are an international patent depository. That's on the kind of most basic level that we help businesses. But we have technical expertise that can provide businesses with services to help them take their products to the next step and help them develop it, right, particularly on the cultivation side. And so depending on the nature of the businesses, depends on the nature of the collaboration, but certainly we really like to collaborate with businesses on a kind of mutual level to try and take both their product and our science to the next level. And certainly we've been working with a range of businesses from SMEs to big companies, including Glycomar.
So maybe you can comment on how this Technical Core Facility Institute can help speed up innovation. Very good, very good, very good.
Yeah, exactly that. We have a microalgae project. It's for a cosmeceutical ingredient, actually. It's going through scale up, but there's some sort of deeper technical issues that we need to address around the productivity of the organism. Where we're doing strain optimization, and essentially we are working with SAMS to do that kind of work, and they're very well placed. They have the expertise to do that kind of deep technical work, and it's a great collaboration.
Okay. Does the local government encourage this type of public-private partnership to spur innovation in not only nutraceuticals but in other domains?
Yeah, not just the local government. There is support available from Highlands and Islands Enterprise, who are sponsors today. Yep. But there's also national support in the UK. All academic support is very strongly directed towards collaboration with industry, and we see this now at the European level with Horizon 2020 programs, where it's almost a requirement that there is an industrial element participation in projects for them to be funded. So there is a very strong move towards that, both nationally and regionally.
Okay, so yeah, I think we can, those who are familiar with the European system with Horizon 2020 and other R&D financing tools, you can see that Europe is really behind innovation and public-private partnerships to help speed up innovation. And in this market of nutraceuticals, where the markets are dying for innovation, this type of technical assistance can help SMEs, and a lot of us here today work for SMEs, help push along their innovation and get their ingredients to the giant players, who can then market it and then put it in your fruit juice, so that the end customer has more endurance to run that marathon the next day. Do you want to finish up on that, Joanne?
Yeah, it was just to say that, I mean, certainly within Scotland, there's a lot of support from both regional and our national government for helping businesses, particularly SMEs, engage with academics. And I think that it's beneficial not just for the SME who gets to tackle one of their technical challenges, but also from an academic perspective. It's quite an exciting change within the funding environment because it allows us to take our research and develop it in collaboration with a company to make our research have impact within wider society, which for an academic organisation is really important and really exciting for us. And certainly within Scotland, as Charlie says, and wider UK actually, there's a large shift in the way funding is allocated, and it's much more orientated towards business academic collaboration as opposed to academic only research.
Yeah, no, that's clear. That's clear. It looks like one of the weak points is in the cultivation support. We touched about that earlier, where perhaps the governments need to support cultivation efforts, at least outside in Europe and perhaps also in the United States, a little bit more vigorously. So, okay, enough about the government support with regards to innovation development. If we now start to focus on the marketing issues of nutraceuticals, that seems to be also a very key issue that not only companies working in marine bioresources, but any company working in ingredients has to pay attention to. And when you want to invest all this money in your photobioreactor, you better know what the stumbling blocks are going to be down the road. Are you going to be working on a hard claim or a soft well-being claim? I think that's the real crux of the issue here. So Charlie, when you're an SME and you're working on developing these products, what do you have to keep in mind when, in terms of marketing and your claims as you're developing these new innovative ingredients?
Okay, so the regulation has changed in Europe in the last decade, and essentially now if you have a novel ingredient which would be classed as a novel food, you have to get regulatory approval to make a claim and to market that product. So obviously there's a basic safety requirement, but also if you're claiming any sort of efficacy, you then have to support that efficacy claim. If you say, it makes you, I don't know, it's good for diabetes or something, then you have to support that with proper clinical data, and that
Right.
has to go through regulatory approval. So
Right.
it's a much lower hurdle than pharmaceuticals, but it's still a hurdle, and that's been a significant change, and that's slightly different from other geographies, perhaps.
Yeah, so different geographies have different tolerances for claims. Perhaps the two largest markets, which are the United States and Japan, have a different tolerance for claims than, say, the European market. Would you agree?
Yes, there's a different regulatory framework. So I personally don't see this as a problem. We work in the pharmaceutical market, so we deal with a very difficult regulatory framework. And I actually think that we should embrace the regulation. If we want to innovate, make something new from microalgae, something which hasn't been eaten before, we need to show it's safe, and we need to prove that it works. And I think the consumer wants that, and there's a cost, sure, but we need to work to embrace that and see that it's really based in good science, and we should seek to do good science and validate our products.
Yeah, again, it's not a resource-specific question, but it is a question for any company working and developing innovative. Fabrice, do you have a point to say on marketing claims?
I think you need to differentiate the hard claim and the soft claim, and also at the end of the day, what counts is the consumer perception. So I'm a strong believer that the consumer perception is actually the most important thing. So you can force it by your hard claim and trying to, and it costs you millions in some clinical trials. But today, if any consumer, you ask him if fiber is good, and they say yes, but they don't know why, but they know it's good, and so on. So you have a certain, and as we are talking about marine products, I mean omega-3, that's the same. I mean omega-3, any consumer knows that omega-3 is good for health, and not sure he knows exactly why, but he knows it's good. So you don't need to add a lot onto that. If you just declare omega-3, I think it's going to be sufficient. So, and as you're talking about marine
resource,
I think also the consumer understands that things that come out of the sea, like seaweed, etc., is good for them. So, so they have a good perception, a positive perception, and at the end of the day, that's the only thing that counts. It's a consumer perception.
Okay, but if you're going to go for, so you're going to go for something that, a claim that's going to be a very low bar claim, so that you can sell more, rather than a high bar claim that says, all right, this ingredient is going to prevent Alzheimer's. Because the regulatory will say, well, you have to prove that. You're going to have to do some clinical trials to prove that it's doing that. So your argument is that you're going to spend a lot of money, you're going to invest a lot of money in this product. You're going to develop. You're going to spend millions of dollars to build your photobioreactor or your cultivation or cultivate seaweed. And in the end, you're just going to say it's good for you. And so, are you going to get the same return on investment?
No, but I think it really depends on your strategy. If you're coming with a molecule and you need to have a hard claim, then you're going to need to go through those clinical trials with a risk that it doesn't do what you were expecting, and then you have spent millions, because you're talking about big
millions,
amounts,
yeah,
for nothing. So it depends. I mean, you have some people that and some companies that want to go in that direction, and then they are going to spend the money, and then it's going to take some time, and then eventually they are going to have that claim, which eventually will be something like helps something or helps preventing or
right.
So,
right.
And then again, I think there are a certain number of things that the consumer perceive as being good, and you can surf on it.
Yeah, okay.
So you can surf on it. And
it does seem to be a marketing strategy. You're right. We have an example of a company called Cerule that works with spirulina. And they have this new molecule that's called Cyactive. And it's a novel ingredient that they say supports a healthy inflammation response through a 5-prong mechanism action. Because it is clinically shown to relieve physical discomfort, Cyactive helps consumers feel better, do more, and enjoy a better quality of life. So in the end, they said, they start with sort of, we're going to say something really important. In the end, we're very soft. And they probably did spend a lot of money on some trials. And if you look on their website, they'll show the trials that they did. They'll show these scientific papers that came out of their research. But in the end, they have a little asterisk that say, generally regarded as safe, and that is for the American market, GRAS. You get this label, it's generally regarded as safe. There you go. It's going to enjoy a better quality of life. Back underneath, if the consumer is interested, they can always look and they can see what the company had in its plans for this molecule. But in terms of the regulatory, they're just going to go for better quality of life. And maybe that's all you need. As you said, with innovation comes risk, and the companies are going to try something. The companies are going to try to market their ingredient in one particular way that the regulatory agency may not be ready for, and it's going to slip through. The regulatory is going to say, you can't do that. But at that point, it's already out of the bag, and the consumer is going to realize there's something here maybe. It's not going to hurt me. I'm going to take it. So that's great. That's great. Again, that's not a resource-specific issue. It's an important issue for anybody in the ingredients business. Now, in the end, what is the importance of the marine biology of the BioMarine resource? A few weeks ago in Las Vegas, there was a big conference, one of the largest in the world, called Supply Side West. It's an ingredients congress. It's in Las Vegas. And if you look at the topics that were presented during the natural food, the natural ingredient sections, not once was marine resources mentioned. During the entire week, when they were talking about natural ingredients, they were talking about GMP, they were talking about partnering, they were talking about nutrigenomics. And now nutrigenomics is this idea that you can take an ingredient and it's going to set off, it's going to turn on certain genes so that you're feeling better, so that you, to improve your well-being. They talked about engaging doctors so that doctors would, instead of prescribing you drugs, would perhaps prescribe you ingredients to your diet. Again, this idea of prevention. But why were marine bioresources left out? So if at one of the largest ingredient salons and congresses in the world, they don't say a thing about marine bioresources, why does it matter? Charlie?
It doesn't matter.
No, come on. It's got to matter.
Okay.
We've got all these people here. There are a lot of people here.
It obviously does matter because I do it. But from the market side, it doesn't matter. The market doesn't care really if it's a marine source. I'm being controversial here, but that's the way I feel. Your product is an industrial biotech product or a medical biotechnology product or an agricultural biotechnology product. So if you're talking about the market doesn't really care. And I work in cosmeceuticals, pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, and that's genuinely the case. They're interested about what your molecule is and what it does. Okay? Where it does matter is in terms of the potential for innovation. We have already been described millions of species which are unexplored, and that is a huge opportunity for innovation to create novel molecules with novel activities which will address some of the big challenges facing our society. So that's where it matters. In terms of the market, I don't think they really care.
Fabrice, do you have any word to say on that?
It does matter.
Does matter.
It does matter that, and a bit echoing what you're saying, Charlie, it does matter in the fact that I think marine is a fantastic, the seaweed, the macroalgae, the microalgae are fantastic resource for many things and to some extent underexploited today. So there is a lot, and the fact that they don't talk about that is a perfect representation of it. It's still underexploited.
It's still underexploited, yeah.
Underexploited, understood, and there is a lot of potential. I mean, I give you one example. If you project the need for proteins over the next years, there will be not enough proteins for the population.
Right. So
how do you compensate that?
Right.
And so people are starting to think about proteins out of insects, etc. You have proteins in seaweed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is just an idea of the potential that you have. I mean, those products are used already, but they can be used even more. You can extract more compounds out of it of high value and high interest for health, etc. And for feed application. So I think, and the beauty, I really find the beauty of all of that is that you're talking about a raw material that is sustainable, renewable, without impact on the environment.
All right.
Because, I mean, if you cultivate more ground, you're going to put more pesticide. But if you cultivate seaweed in the sea, you will not put any pesticide into it. No. So it's going to be completely natural with no impact on the resource. You can even have, and I learned that through the few days, you can even have synergies between aquaculture and sea farms and, and seaweed cultivation. So it's a huge potential. And it's a fantastic opportunity for
that's what Donald was saying before.
Economy.
Yeah, Donald was saying that before. You have this idea of you have the fish growing here, the aquaculture, and then you have seaweed growing off the nets.
And that's the reason why I admire that Congress and what BioMarine and the inventors of BioMarine are doing, because this is a place where, for once, you have a collection of companies from the sea to the sea extract to the innovation, investors, etc., that all gather together around that blue economy topic, which I think is one of the major opportunity that we can be facing.
I think you're right. Joanne, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think just coming back to your original question, I think the answer is yes and no. I think it depends on where your market is. I think for specific ingredients which you might be producing to sell to a larger food ingredients company, the answer is probably they don't really, back to Charlie's answer, they don't really care whether it's marine, they just want to know whether it's functional. I think where you're supplying your product to the end consumer, actually the fact that it's marine has a massive marketing potential.
Yes.
Particularly with the movement towards much healthier food, organic food. Like Fabrice says, I think there's a lot to be said for resources in the marine environment, and so I think we need to differentiate where the market is, and then lay the importance on what marketing claim you put to each of those audiences.
Well, we see that these giants are moving into the sector of and looking for new innovation in marine bioresources. We mentioned it before with BASF buying a company in Norway that has to do with the extraction of proteins and antioxidants and oils from fish byproducts. So there is a certain demand from the larger companies to get these innovative marine ingredients.
I wonder how much of that demand is driven by the end consumer demand for natural products.
That's good. That's the question.
Yeah, and you see, as you say, big players moving into this sector and positioning themselves for it. But you know, I've come up with a company like Croda, who are a massive ingredients manufacturer that no one's ever heard of, but you'll have used one of their products today, they always say.
Really?
They're a multinational. And they've positioned themselves, they've built marine fermentation capability, but they're still not really utilizing that for marine natural products because they haven't found products which meet their criteria. So they're interested and they're excited about doing it, but and they see the potential, but the product has to meet their criteria. So it's a yes and no answer.
Okay. Well, that's good. You know, if at any point somebody has a question from the audience, I'll of course take it. But this is almost the end of our roundtable today, and I think what we're able to say, we've come to a conclusion that yes, marine bioresources matter because these resources are an utilized source of innovation. We have to speak up a little louder so that the big companies and even the end users realize that there are benefits from using the marine bioresources as a source for ingredients, and that these ingredients can help our well-being and help prevent cancer perhaps, and help with Alzheimer's, and help lose weight, and help with our acid reflux, things like that. But we also know that even if there is government help to help spur innovation, there is still some need for government to still step in and support cultivation efforts, certainly with macroalgae, seaweed, because here, as Fabrice said over and over today, that we know that there's a lot of space out there. We can easily grow seaweed. It's not polluting, and in fact, it actually cleans the water as it grows. So we need, there are certain areas, especially in Europe, needs more government support so that we can increase our cultivation of seaweed and help respond to this demand of the nutraceutical markets. Government will then realize that if they help this effort, they will be investing in their future, they will be investing in future jobs, and they will be investing in solving some of today's challenges that the world faces today. So marine bioresources are a source of innovation for the nutraceutical and functional food markets. And I'd like to thank all of the three panelists today. Thank you, Fabrice, Joanne, and Charlie, for your expertise today. And again, for Donald and Highland Island Enterprises Economic Development Agency for sponsoring today's session. And we're just about done, so I think, unless you have a final word, Charlie, Joanne, or Fabrice, we're just about done. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.